Archaeology Porn.
Welcome back to Into the Dust and to our latest episode of Archaeology Porn. And as we know in this genre, bigger is better. So join me today as we ogle the biggest archaeological phenomenon of them all, the Nazca Lines. And that takes us to southern Peru, where someone 2,000 years ago decided to turn the desert into a giant sketchpad. We're talking hummingbirds the size of a sports stadium, lines so straight they could double as laser sights, and just enough mystery to keep conspiracy theorists frothing for decades. So strap on in, because we're headed to the Nazca Lines. The Nazca Lines are the most famous geoglyphs in the world. Geo meaning earth, glyph meaning symbol. That's archaeology speak for designs so big you can only really appreciate them from far away, ideally from a plane or at least a very high hill. They stretch across about 400 to 450 square kilometers, that's roughly the size of Barbados, of the Nazca Pampa, an arid plain about 250 miles or 400 kilometers south of Lima. In this, one of the driest places on Earth, the lines comprise over 800 straight lines. Over 300 geometric shapes, so think trapezoids, spirals, zigzags, and 700 and counting figurative biomorphs, animals and animalesque figures, plants, human-like figures, etc. And that count has just jumped by about 300, thanks to some recent AI wizardry we'll get to later. They date mainly from an 800-year period between 200 BC to 600 AD, created by the Nazca culture and in some cases earlier Paracas people. No big monuments, no writing system, but this was their monumental public art. Now let's talk first about how they were made. It's important to understand that the Nazca Pampa is covered by dark, iron oxide-coated pebbles, which is key to making these giants stand out. You see, it's all about the color contrast between those dark stones on the surface and the lighter brown substrate beneath. And there are three ways the designs were created by those ancient artistes. First, subtractive or relief. This involves removing that dark oxidized soil, gravel, or stones from the surface to reveal the lighter color subsoil beneath, creating a high contrast design. This first method is most common for the figurative geoglyphs, such as the hummingbird, monkey, and spider. Second, there was additive or stone arranged glyphs, and this is exactly what it sounds like, piling up stones to create a raised image. These are less common than the relief glyphs and used primarily for the straight line and geometric glyphs. And then third, there are the ones that mix these two techniques. These are pretty rare, but some of the spirals were made in this way. And as for size matters not. Yeah, it does, Yoda, and that's exactly why we're here, as this is one of the largest, if not the largest, archaeological site in the world. Some lines run dead straight for 15 miles, hopping over ravines without a wobble. The largest biomorphs are about 350 meters across, which is about 3.5 American football fields. And the smallest newly discovered ones are just 10 to 20 meters. From the ground, many are just shallow trenches. From above, they become animals, geometric forms, and even a knife-wielding orca. Yes, we'll get there. From space, they're visible to satellites. From conspiracy YouTube, they're somehow alien landing strips. Spoiler alert, they're not. No alien engineer would settle for a dirt runway with a monkey drawn next to it. Now, one of the reasons the Nazca Lines get caught up in so much conspiratorial thinking is sort of the pyramid argument. The idea that there's no way that people 2,000 years ago could have made these things without advanced technology. But the Nazca didn't need aerial views or heavy construction equipment. They had patience and geometry. Archaeologists have actually found wooden stakes marking the line ends and curves, one of which was carbon dated to about 525 AD. The method involved drawing the design to scale on a small surface, transferring it to the desert using a grid system, placing stakes at key points, connecting them with ropes. For curves, anchor a stake, swing a rope like a giant compass, and then scrape away the top gravel along the guidelines. In fact, way back in 1983, well-known American academic, paranormal investigator, and all-around skeptic Joe Nickell, who just passed away, was able to recreate a 440-foot or 135-meter condor like the one in Peru, using the same kinds of materials available to the ancient Nazca in just a few days. He made his design in Kentucky, however. And what were those tools? Simple digging sticks, brushes, baskets for moving pebbles, no bulldozers, no ancient laser beams, and yes, that actually is a theory someone tried to push.
Begin laser ignition sequence.
Begin laser ignition!
As for accuracy, desert knolls can give limited vantage points enough for surveyors to check proportions. And given the Nazca obsession with straightness, I mean, some of these lines deviate by less than a degree over kilometers, they clearly had both the skill and the will to measure with care. But why such perfectionism? Well, if your culture's religion revolved around pleasing the gods of water and fertility, and you believe the gods could see from above, you'd better make that hummingbird look like a hummingbird, not a mutant pigeon. The Nazca society declined and seems to have disappeared altogether from history around 700 AD. It's thought due to environmental degradation and disaster. However, the lines did not totally disappear along with their creators. 16th century Spanish chronicler Pedro Cieza de Leon, who traveled in tow with the conquistadors, first mentioned the lines in 1553, describing them as trail markers, and as we'll see later, he might not have been totally wrong. But in modern terms, the story begins with, and I'm totally going to butcher this name because no hablo español, Toribio Mejia Xexpe in the 1920s. Hiking in the foothills, he noticed lines in geometric shapes, but without aerial perspective, the scale was still mysterious. Enter the 1930s commercial pilots who started telling anyone who would listen about giant drawings on the desert floor. Then came Paul Kosok, American historian studying ancient irrigation, who was based at Long Island University, Brooklyn, and take it from me, that's how the locals pronounce it. Flying over the lines on June 21, 1941, the winter solstice, he saw the sunset almost exactly over the end of one long line. That was enough for him to call Nazca the largest astronomy book in the world. Kosok's assistant, and soon the line's fiercest defender, was Maria Reich, and boy was she fierce.
I am Daenerys Stormborn, of House Targaryen, of the blood of old Valyria.
Okay, maybe not that fierce, but she, more than anyone, is responsible for the preservation and understanding of these incredible ancient monuments. Maria Reich was born a German mathematician and translator who came to Peru in the late 1930s for a tutoring job, and then basically never left. She joined Kosok's research, fell in love with the lines, and probably with the challenge of saving them, and made that her life's work. She spent decades measuring them with nothing more than tape measures, a theodolite, and raw stubbornness, charting hundreds of figures in painstaking detail. She argued that many of the lines marked astronomical events, solstices, equinoxes, star risings, possibly functioning as a giant agricultural calendar. And she didn't just study, she patrolled, literally. Maria was known to ride her bicycle around the desert with a broom to sweep sand off the lines, or confront bulldozer drivers about to cut a road through the geoglyph. This all occurred as pressures grew for development of the Pan-American Sur Highway, mining, irrigation, and tourism infrastructure. She persuaded the Peruvian government to protect the area, getting it recognition as a National Cultural Heritage Site, and in 1994, UNESCO World Heritage status. Her tiny house in Nazca Town became a museum, her grave overlooks the desert, and her name is forever synonymous with the site. Were her astronomical theories universally accepted? No. In 1990, archaeoastronomers Gerald Hawkins and Anthony Aveni found some alignments, but not enough to make the whole thing some kind of astronomical calendar. Seriously, is there any ancient monument that people don't try to make into a space map or clock of some sort? Oh, and by the way, Hawkins' archaeoastronomical 1960s-era interpretations of Stonehenge as a giant prehistoric observatory and computer, which have been largely discarded by archaeologists today, still predominate popular thinking. But if you want to hear more about that, see my interview with Mike Parker Pearson. And since then, there have been numerous studies and theories regarding the Nazca Lines, why they were made and what they mean. Johann Reinhardt, known for his high-altitude archaeology in the Himalayas and Andes, including discovery of some of those stunning frozen ice mummies, argued the lines are best understood in the context of Andean cosmology. Mountains were sacred, water resources were divine, and the desert was part of a ceremonial landscape. In his model, the lines point towards mountains and water sources, places that control the life-giving rains. They're not just art, they're pathways for ceremonial processions, connecting communities to sacred peaks. Anthony Aveni, a pioneer of archaeoastronomy from Colgate University, who I mentioned just above, suggested the line served multiple functions: processional routes, ceremonial spaces, markers of community identity, essentially an early American version of public art and architecture. And then, of course, there are some hokey New Age ideas: water worship, shamanistic visions, and of course, aliens. However, like everything else nowadays, it seems, AI has proven to be a game changer. In a 2024 paper, an archaeological team led by Masato Sakai of Japan's Yamagata University and IBM Research deployed AI and low-flying drones over 243 square miles of the Pampa. The AI filtered tens of thousands of aerial photos, eliminating 98% of noise and flagging over 1,300 possible geoglyphs. Field teams then confirmed 303 new figurative designs, nearly doubling the known set in half a year. These new finds were mostly small, relief-type figures: people, cats, monkeys, birds, often along ancient trail networks. This supports the idea that geoglyphs were waypoints and ritual stations across pilgrimage routes. And there's the R word, so you can take a drink. Among my favorites, crazed orca with a knife. And then there's Rocky of Bullwinkle fame. Beyond that, the team's work supported many of the earlier findings from Reinhardt and Aveni regarding the geoglyphs' purposes. Now, despite that hard-fought protection won by Maria Reich and that UNESCO World Heritage designation, not all the news has been good. In 2014, Greenpeace activists left footprints on the hummingbird as part of a publicity stunt during climate change talks in the country. It's sure good to know that they have other helpful activities besides damaging art museums. Thanks, assholes. In 2018, a truck driver plowed over 3 glyphs to avoid a toll booth. Turns out Oopsie Poopsie doesn't repair a 1,500-year-old design. And finally, in early 2025, Peru's Ministry of Culture proposed slashing the protected zone area by over 40% and opening the land to mining concessions. The backlash was immediate. Archaeologists, conservationists, and the public erupted. Within weeks, the government reversed the decision, restored full protection, and formed a joint oversight body with UNESCO. Now for the fun part. How do you visit? Well, from Lima, you can take a 6 or 7 hour bus ride or a flight to the small airport there. Stay in Nazca town. Lodgings are basic but serviceable. But in my opinion, to really properly see the lines, take an aerial tour. Flights go anywhere from $80 to $150 and last 30 minutes. Go in the morning for less turbulence, and I've heard you should grab a left side window seat for the best views. And there is this rickety-looking viewing tower. A short climb will give you decent views of nearby lines, but you won't get the big animals. Bring plenty of water, sunscreen, and a hat. But leave those drones at home unless you have special government permission to launch them. And do not walk on the lines. One misplaced boot can smudge a 2,000-year-old design because these are not set in stone. And that's really all there is to it. Plenty of tours operate out of Lima and can take you there, so it's not exactly rocket science. All right, well, that's quite enough, so I will cut it off there, but it's hard to keep it tight given how huge these things are. But when you do make it there, I'm sure you'll agree. These things are hot, and it's nothing to do with those temperatures in the desert, because they are the biggest, baddest archaeology porn on Earth. Hey, if you like what you heard, give me that thumbs up below, hit that bell to subscribe, or if you want to support more independent archaeology content, consider contributing to my Patreon, where you can enjoy some exclusive members-only benefits and other goodies. Until the next dig.